Hello, people. My name is Mohini Dey, and you're watching my brand new talk show, What a Melophile Wants. Now, I believe the most effective and transformative creations, I guess, are when the technique is mastered. But then the individual goes deeper than the technique becomes more of a tool then. It's very rare, and although a technique can hit the wall, so to speak, meaning the better you get, the harder it is to get better, the ability to use the technique to infuse the playing with deeper sense of uniqueness and freshness is just unlimited. I feel like everything's just scripted by God, and when we just allow that to move through us with the feeling of joy, clarity, contentment in the expressions of gifts we have, when we just believe it's us doing it, then there's a desire for more, which is never enough. And today I have an extremely special and an outstanding artist on my show who is a rapper and bassist. She's an American Grammy nominated musician, having appeared on TV shows including The Grammys, Saturday Night Live, Good Morning America, The Ellen, and so many more. She's best known for touring with Beyonce. Not only does she play the bass like no one, but she also was the assistant music director for Beyonce's live shows. Words fall short to describe her and her work. Let's talk to her and get to know more about her. Please welcome the incredible Divinity Roxx. Yay! Firstly, it's an honor to have you on my show. Thank you very much for coming on my show and doing this for me.
Thank you for having me and thinking about me.
How are you and how are you doing in this pandemic situation that we're in? What's going on? Give us a little insight.
There's a lot going on right now, especially over here in the U.S. But I'm hanging in there, doing the best I can to stay active and healthy and and engaged.
That's beautiful. That's great. In my other episodes, I've talking about so many different kinds of topics. What I do is I pick different kinds of topics with different artists, and we talk about either music, pocket, consistency, transformative individuality, and so many other things. So today, I want to ask you, what is music to you, and how much does it weigh in your life? How did that? Give us a little backstory about how it happened to you.
How music happened? Well, I mean, like most people, I was introduced to music by my parents.
Oh.
My mom is an extremely, she loves music. She plays music all the time. Music is always playing in her house.
Right.
It's very much a part of what helps her to live, I think. It's like almost as important as air for her. And so growing up, there was always music playing, and there was always different types of music playing. So music became extremely important to me because it was the one thing I think from a very early on, from a very early age, made me feel emotions that I may not have been able to explain why I was feeling them.
Right.
And so music was a language that spoke to my soul in a sense.
Right.
And as a child, it made me feel deeply. And so I gravitated towards it and wanted to be able to speak that language.
How old were you then?
I mean, I can't remember. I mean, maybe 4 or 5 years old, just having these deep emotional responses to music, whether it be love songs or songs that were spiritually oriented, just connecting with the lyrics and the music and melody and all of those things, and not really having the language to talk about what it was I was connecting to, but just feeling something that was powerful.
But like out of all the instruments, how did bass happen?
So bass, it's funny because when I think back at being a child, bass was very prominent in a lot of the music that I listened to. I grew up listening to a lot of funk. Of course, James Brown. The very first concert I ever went to as a child was a Rick James concert. Rick James was a bass player. I remember having, I mean, I'm a lot older than you. I remember having a Walkman with a little cassette tape and my little headphones. And I would walk to the corner store to buy my candy or whatever, or to the candy lady. And I would have Rick James bumping in my ears, I remember just tapping my feet and my hands along to the bass, and just the bass being this driving force of the music. But I didn't pick up an instrument when I was a child. I didn't pick up the bass until I was in my second year at college. I was studying to be a journalist at the University of California at Berkeley.
Oh, beautiful.
And yeah, and I was hanging out with some musicians. I was a rapper. And so I was rapping with a bunch of musicians, and I was attracted to the guitar. I mean, the guitar is the most popular instrument, I think.
Yeah.
And so being a rapper and somebody who's a lead person, like always in the
Right.
front of the band, I figured,
Hmm.
hey man, I'm going to get a guitar, I said to one of my friends.
Right.
And my friend said, no, man, you should get a bass. It's like, why? He was like, because you're cool like a bass player. Like you don't have that guitar vibe. You're like a bass player vibe. So he's like, you should get a bass. And I was like, okay, well, I'll get a bass. And I got it and fell in love with it.
Oh,
So
that's cool. That's an interesting story. Wow.
that's
And
how it came to me.
so when did you like seriously start learning the bass? Because obviously guitar is way more different than bass. So like, when was the time you started like actually practicing bass
As
seriously?
soon as I got the bass. So I bought the
Oh,
bass.
like
Yeah, I went home for the summer. I bought a bass guitar and I took it back to school with me the next, in the spring or the
oh,
fall, whenever school started, the fall.
mhm.
And I mean, I had a lot of musician friends because I was a
Right,
rapper,
right,
and
right.
we always performed
Did
with
you
live.
did you go to any music college?
No, no, not yet. When I first started playing the bass, I wasn't in school. I was still in school to be a journalist.
Okay.
I went back to school to UC Berkeley to complete my second year, I
Hmm.
believe. And my friend showed me some exercises and ways to really, this is not natural holding a bass guitar. It's just not
Right.
natural to hold
Mm.
your body like this.
Right.
So he kind of taught me how to hold my left hand and to
Mm.
give me strengthening exercises for my left hand.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time at home doing these exercises where you just go up and down the fretboard, fret by
Yeah.
fret,
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down,
Yeah.
all the way up.
Mm.
And I would turn on my favorite records and play along by ear.
Mhm.
And and I bought myself a Mel Bay book, a bass book, because
Okay.
I grew up playing the clarinet, so I knew how to read treble clef, and I figured that I would teach myself how to read bass clef, and I sort
Mhm.
of put myself on the same trajectory and tried to teach myself how to
Mm.
play bass the same way I was taught to play the clarinet
Mhm.
as
Mm.
a child. I
Right.
was playing clarinet when I was like 8 or 9. So I
Mm.
kind of put myself on in that mindset. Okay, this is how you learn to play an instrument.
Right. Right.
I learned how to read bass clef. I knew how to read. I knew what a quarter note is, half note, whole note, eighth note, 16th. Like I knew how to do that. So I
Right.
just learned where the positions were on the fret, on the staff for bass,
Right.
and just
Right.
started playing the book
That's
and playing
beautiful.
with songs.
Right.
And
Right.
I loved it. I loved it. So I spent a lot of time
Yeah.
just playing.
Yeah, yeah, same here. Like just I would just put random music that sometimes I wouldn't even like and just play along with it. I think
Yeah.
it's great to like kind of shock yourself and just not know what's coming sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was like the big thing that happened to you? The first big thing that happened to you in your musical growth?
The first big thing that happened for me was my hip hop group and I. So I have two sort of careers. There's a career of me as a rapper, which lasted from the time I was about 13 all
Right.
the way till the time I was like 20 something, where I picked up the bass.
Right. Right.
So one of the biggest things was that my rap group was opened up for The Roots, and we opened up for De La Soul, and J.
Yeah.
Rue the Damager was the biggest concert that we had been able to play at this spot in Atlanta
Hmm.
called The Underground. And we became popular on the underground Atlanta hip hop scene. We opened up
Hmm.
for all the major artists that came in town, and we released our own music. And our DJ was DJ Kimmett, who was the DJ for Arrested Development. And so we
Yeah.
recorded our own music at home, and we pretty much like took control of our careers very early on.
That's
One of
amazing.
the biggest things that happened to me as a bass player, of course, was going to Victor Wooten's bass camp.
Oh, you
And
did.
being asked to tour with Victor after the base camp.
Oh,
So
beautiful. That's
yeah,
amazing. How
yeah.
long ago was that?
The year 2000, yeah, it had to be October of 2000 or August of 2000. I went to Victor Wooten's base camp.
Yeah.
We're asked to introduce ourselves by playing bass. Have you ever been to the camp?
Oh yeah, I was told to play as well.
Yeah,
That's
so
a
the first
ritual they follow. Yeah.
yeah, so
The
the
guest
first
has
day
to
of
come
camp,
play. Yeah.
you play to
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
Right. Right.
And then I played the song that I was working on. I asked him if I could rap and play, and he said, "Yeah, that's what you do." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I do." So I rapped and played the song. And after the camp, you go through the camp for the week or however long. After the camp, maybe 2 weeks after camp, he called me and asked me if I wanted to open up a show. And
Oh,
I
that's
said,
beautiful.
"Yeah, I want to open up your
Oh, so
show."
you were actually you signed up for the camp and you were there for like the whole week.
Yeah, I didn't know Victor
Ah,
before the
oh,
camp. He didn't know
okay, okay,
me.
okay. So I
I
haven't
went.
been to the camp. I was actually touring with another artist from India in the US. We were doing a North American tour, and then he heard that I was in Nashville. So he wrote to me that, you're here in my town. Why don't you
Oh
come
yeah, so come
over?
to the camp.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
applied to the camp. Like I
Yeah.
was, I wasn't playing bass. I mean, I
Right.
wasn't known for playing bass. So I was
Right.
going to the camp as a student so that I could learn because he's the master and he was doing a camp. And I was like,
Yeah.
I have to go see what this man is doing because he's
Yeah.
amazing. And it just so happens that he called me and asked me to tour with him. And that
That's
was how I
amazing.
got my start. Yeah.
Incredible. That's beautiful.
It's
So
crazy.
yeah, that's so fun. That's a really fun story. So like when you're touring with these artists, like such big artists like Jay-Z, Beyonce, and like how's your practice routine like then and now that you have all this time to yourself? How's it like? Give us a little like do you practice? Do you warm up? Because some people don't they just like prepare for the shows and that's it. So everybody's journey is like so different. So I want to know what you do when you're touring. How's your practice routine like then and now?
Um, when I am touring, there's not a lot of time to practice when you're touring.
Hmm.
It's just not. Especially if you're touring on a bus and you're playing
Yeah.
shows
Hmm.
every night, 5 nights a week, 4 nights a week, 4 shows
Yeah.
in a row, three
Mm-hmm.
shows in a row.
Yeah.
You're on a bus, you go to a hotel, get up, lobby call, and you do it all over again.
Yes.
There's not really a lot of time to practice.
Right.
You do a lot of practicing before the tour
Hmm.
because there's this whole process of band rehearsal,
The whole preparation. Yeah.
the preparation for the tour. That's
Yeah.
all practice. You learn the show.
Yeah.
You get the show so ingrained in your body that you can play it in your sleep.
Yeah.
And then you do like some sort of promotional run where you do a bunch of TV shows and then you learn different arrangements of the single.
Mm.
And then you hit the road. And by the time you hit the road, you're just not practicing. Maybe you warm up, you do a sound check.
Yeah.
Um, it's just not, especially on a big tour like Beyonce, there's just no time. I
Right.
just played a tour with Fantasia in October
Hmm.
of this past year, starting in October. And we just did a show last Friday for this live broadcast.
Hmm.
On that tour, I would say the only practice I would do was before the show, I would go through the show on the bass and play
Hmm.
along with my headphones and just kind of play the show.
Mhm.
Think about different things maybe I wanted to add to, oh, I'm gonna play this lick on this part. Oh yeah, that's cool. Let me work this out. Things like that.
Mhm.
As far as this time, you mean since the pandemic started and being at
Yeah.
home, what kind of
Yeah.
practice have I been doing?
Yeah.
Um, I fractured my wrist and my elbow, so I haven't really been
Oh,
practicing that much.
how?
Um, Before I fractured my wrist and elbow, I was studying some Anthony Jackson
Mm.
stuff and playing along with some of his stuff. I was working on my left hand technique
Mm.
and trying to break some of the bad habits that I've formed over the years with my left hand.
Okay.
Habits that I think make my left hand a little bit slower than it could be. So I was trying to work on my speed.
Oh, okay.
But since I fractured my wrist and my elbow, I stopped playing
How did
altogether.
that happen? How did you
I was riding my
fracture?
bike and I
Oh, shit.
fell.
Oh.
And so I just played for the first time consistently over the like 4 or 5 days to get ready
Mm.
for this show we just did with Fantasia.
Right.
Fantasia.live if you want to check it out. It was really good. We had a great show.
Sure.
It was a lot of work though, because I hadn't been playing a lot, but
Right.
I basically just practiced the show.
Right.
You know?
That brings me to my next question, actually. How much of your playing in your gigs, especially solos, is completely improvised over chops and patterns that you've worked out before? And if it's both, then how do you keep that balance?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
So, how much of your playing in your gigs, especially solos, is completely improvised over chops and patterns that say you've worked out before? And if it's both, then how do you keep the balance?
So I think, Anthony Wellington always says that you're not going to play something on stage great that you haven't played in practice. I think that's interesting. I don't know if that's always true, but
I
a
guess
lot of what
it
I
differs, no? Like from people to people, from bands to bands. Sometimes you have the space of taking risks. Sometimes you don't have the space. Like if you're playing, say, for example, with a Japanese band, then you wouldn't have any space to take risks because they're very, very scripted and they want you to play the same thing every night. So, because they don't want, they follow this ritual, like they don't want to give their audience any bad nights or good nights. Whereas if you're playing in a club or like a quartet, quintet, then you have like so much space to just fiddle around and improvise and take any risks you want every night, right?
Yeah, I think it really depends. When you're playing pop shows, it's the same way. If you're not taking risks. I mean, every now and again, with Fantasia, I take all kinds of risks because she
Mm-hmm.
likes it. It fuels her if you do
Right,
something out of the ordinary, because
right.
she notices it and she's like, hell yeah, that made me feel good. That made me
Good,
hype.
yeah.
It made me excited.
Right.
Um, I think that for me, I come from the world of improvisation. My introduction to bass on stage
Mm-hmm.
was playing behind poets and playing behind MCs who were also improvising and freestyling.
Mm-hmm.
And so improvisation is, for me, the most comfortable
It's
place
freedom. Mm-hmm.
to be in. Yeah, it's the most comfortable because I can do whatever it is I want to do. And
Right.
I can take risks and I don't feel bad about them. If it doesn't land, it kind of doesn't land. But then I always follow it up with something that does.
Yes,
I
yes.
think that we practice enough at home where there are some things that we just naturally do. Every
Mm.
musician has
Right.
things that they
It's just a
naturally do.
subconscious nature. Yeah.
You just have these licks that you play. You have these things that you
Yeah.
like to do,
Yeah.
and you practice them. A lot of times we like to practice the things that make us feel good. We like to practice the things that make us feel comfortable.
Yeah.
uh and Anthony also says, I love Anthony Wellington because he has a lot of great sayings. He's like, if you sound good at home when you're practicing, then you're not practicing. You're just playing to make yourself
Yeah.
feel good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But we all do that because we all want to feel good when we play. So
Yeah.
I think there's a good balance of going for things and for just playing things that are going to work, and
Right.
just transposing them into a different key. That's the only thing. This lick is going to work, but
Yeah.
this lick works. I know this lick works in this key,
Yeah.
but let me transpose this lick into this key because this is the key we're in this song. Oh, this is how that works.
Yeah.
And then you.
Yeah. Now
So
your sound is so different. It's got like this perfect amount of grittiness, like perfect amount of swag, like
thank you.
definition. It's so nice and it's so round and you can feel it in your chest.
Thank you.
Um,
That makes me so happy you say that because that's what I'm going for.
yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah, it's
Grit,
beautiful. It's amazing.
roundness, a little bit of high end when I
Yeah.
pop so that you can
Yeah.
hear it, but I don't
Perfect
like to
amount of
sing.
attack. Yeah.
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 I'm an engineer too and a producer, so I have
I can
I
tell.
know what I
Yeah.
want the bass to sound like.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I love that. I love that. So I wanna know, like, who were your major influences that helped you have this sound? Because everybody has people, like I've grown up, looking up to so many musicians, drummers actually, even trumpet players and
Yes.
saxophonists and percussive instruments. So I want you to tell my listeners what was your approach to finding your individuality.
It's funny because I come out of the world of hip hop music, and as an
Right, right.
MC, I was a rapper
That's why
first.
it's so
So
interesting. Yeah.
one of the things that as a rapper, the first thing you have to do is be yourself and sound like yourself. Like you start off with everything. You start off imitating everybody that you look up to and that you like.
Yeah.
But eventually you find your voice.
Yeah.
Like when I was rapping, Black Thought was one of my favorite rappers. Because he rapped fast, but he was clear and clean, and he was extremely clever, but he was still rapid. Outkast, Big Boy, and Andre 3000. They had this rhythm that was extremely unique to the city of Atlanta. And recently, I let a friend of mine hear a verse, and he was like, "You sound like you're from Atlanta when you rap." So I think in the same way I approached the bass that way. I remember though, one of my favorite bass players growing up, and of course she was my favorite because she was the only person who resembled me at all, was Michelle Ndegeocello. Michelle had a tone that was so rich and full. And I used to listen. And the funny thing is that I would never, one thing that I learned as a rapper, if you really like somebody, don't learn their stuff.
Really?
It's totally opposite of what you want.
It's opposite, yeah.
Like I loved Lauryn Hill, but I wouldn't study Lauryn because I didn't want to sound like Lauryn, because she was so unique and I respected her so much. I didn't want to sound like her. There were things about her that I liked that I wanted to incorporate into what I was doing, but I didn't want to sound like her. And that was the same thing with Michelle. I loved her tone. I would go to her concerts and she would play this Ampeg, and this was back when she was probably playing a Fender.
Okay.
And her tone was always so deep and dark. And I remember, like, this was back when you could stay after the show and possibly meet the artist. Like I would hang out and wait at the back door because I wanted to talk to this woman because I was so intrigued by her sound and her tone. And I remember saying to her one day, can I just ask you, how are you getting that tone? I was like, because I would turn up the bass, the EQ, I would boost the bass. I would turn up the bass on the amp. I would, because I wanted to just have that deep tone. I would say, what are you doing? Is it that? And she looked at me and she said, "It's in the hands."
It's in the hands. Yeah.
I was so mad and angry. And frustrated. I was like, "Are you using flat wounds though? Like, what is it you're doing?" And she just said, "It's in the hands." And it's so funny because it's not until now that I can totally understand and respect that answer more than I could back then. And it's only because I've been playing for so long now.
Right.
So back then I hadn't been playing but for maybe a couple of years. So I didn't get that. But now I get that it's in the hands. And the only reason why I get it is because one of the things people talk about is my tone. And I've been playing some clinics or something, and people are like, what are you doing? How are you getting that tone? And I'm like, well, everything is all the EQ is straight up and down. I may have boosted the bass a little bit, maybe 2 dB, turn the bass up. But otherwise, it's only coming from here.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's so funny because I wish I could say, I was mad when she told me that, but now I completely get it. And I feel like I've found my tone. Another person whose tone I love Marcus's tone.
Yeah. Amazing.
Marcus's tone is so unique.
Yeah.
Miles Davis's tone is so unique. Victor's tone is so unique. Larry Graham's tone is so unique to them. And whenever Larry Johnson, Lewis Johnson, so unique. When you hear them, you know it's them. You just know it. Alyssa has a tone that's so unique. I remember hearing her on that on that Mark Ronson record and knowing it was her. I was like, I bet
Mhm.
that's Alyssa on the bass.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's the key to being, a good musician is
Right,
for somebody to hear you play an instrument, and no matter what
right.
bass I pick up,
Yeah.
it's gonna sound like me.
Exactly, exactly. I'm sure like a lot of people must have come up to you and be like, how do I approach finding my individuality? Because I want to sound like them. I want to sound like this. I don't have my voice. People feel that they don't have their voice, but what I believe is everybody already has their voice. They just don't know it. You just have to
Yeah.
finesse it. You just have to finesse it. That's all.
Yes.
So, what would you tell them if somebody comes up to you and be like, how do I find my voice?
You don't have to find it. It's
Mm,
already there.
there. Yeah.
It's already there. My voice doesn't sound like your voice. My fingerprint doesn't look like your fingerprint. You
Yes.
are already an extremely unique individual. The way we learn language is we imitate our parents.
Yes.
So when we say some words, we sound like our parents, but
And I say
eventually,
it's very transformative because with time we change as people, and our
absolutely.
tone, our sound, our outlook, everything changes, and that's why our playing also evolves with us as people.
Exactly. Exactly. We are always evolving, and as long as
Yeah.
we continue to look for inspiration in places, and as long as we continue to develop ourselves,
Right.
we'll always come into this place where we have a new voice or a
Right.
different
Right.
version of our voice.
Some people have to find that one route to have a marriage between them as people and say whatever profession they're in. In our cases, bass player, right? Fortunately, I was the same person. I was not two different person where I'm like, on stage I'm somebody, and then off stage I'm like, oh hello, hi, and then on stage I'm like a diva. I'm not that. I'm pretty much the same person. But sometimes what happens is some people, they have a hard time finding the swag in their playing, but they already have it as a person. Like, if for example I'm talking to you and I sound bold, right, but sometimes that can't come out of your playing. So how would you, what would you tell people to approaching that? Like, what are the steps they can follow or practices they can do to find and approach that, to get there?
I mean, it's time. It's really
Mm-hmm.
time, and everybody develops differently. You have to
Mm,
keep playing. You have to play
yeah.
with as many people as you can,
Yeah.
many different types of situations as you can, play as much different types of music as you can, so
Yes.
that you can hone in on what it is that's
Hmm.
that's essentially you.
Yes.
You know, that's the only thing. I mean, you're not a 20-year-old. It's almost funny, like as you grow up, like when you're super little, you think you know everything. When you're
Mm,
16, you think you know everything.
yeah.
You're 17, you like, yo, I'm grown. And then you turn 21 and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Now I feel like I know some things. And then you turn 30 and you're like, oh, yo, I didn't know anything when I was 17 and when I was 21. Now I really feel like I know everything. And then you turn 40 and you're like, wait a minute. Now I'm extremely comfortable with who I am. It's really about becoming comfortable with who you are. And it takes
Yeah.
time to do that. Some people reach that
Mm,
place a lot sooner than others, but you
right.
have to give yourself grace. I don't think we give ourselves enough grace as human
Mhm.
beings in
Believe
general.
in yourself. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
you
be
have
in
to,
disbelief.
and
Yeah.
you have to forgive yourself, and you have to give yourself the space to grow, because you're not who at 21, you're not who you're going to be. There is an older version of yourself
Yes.
that you are becoming. And it's not until you get there that you realize, man, if I could go back and say to my 18-year-old self, hey, 18-year-old self,
Yeah.
this is what life is about. This is where you're going. This is what's going to happen for you. We
Yeah.
don't know. So we just have to, the journey is what it's all about. We always worry about the destination,
Mhm.
but it's in the journey that the magic actually
Did
happens.
you have any goals or dreams set for you as a kid growing up? Okay, that this is something I want to do when I grow up.
Absolutely. Everybody does. As a kid, I
I
mean,
didn't. I had no idea. I
you had
didn't
no
want to
idea.
do, no idea. I didn't even want to do music.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
what did you want to do? Nothing.
So I wanted to become a fashion designer.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to become a fashion. I applied for a fashion college and I got selected, but that was the time when I got a job in a big band in here. He's like, everybody worships him as God because his music is amazing,
Yeah, yeah.
But I did not grow up listening to his music at all. I was listening to Western music, jazz, pop, R&B, a lot of black funk and everything. And because in my house, my parents both were musicians. My mom was a Hindustani classical singer, and my mom and my dad is a bass player who was doing all these Western, genres. And so fusion was happening in the house. That's why I have a little bit of knowledge of the Carnatic world, Indian music, all the ragas and konako, takadimi, takitas, and all that with the
Yeah.
Western knowledge. So, and like I started playing in clubs Friday, Saturday nights, jazz standards with a keyboard player. Amazing, amazing keyboard player. I don't know if you know, his name is Louis Banks. And
Okay.
so growing up, and then I was just playing the bass because my dad made me do it because he noticed something in me. Like it's pretty much the same story actually. I started tapping the right tempo at the age of 3 when he was playing through his processor. He put the headphones on my ears, and I was just grooving to the music. And he noticed that, and he was like, he realized like, oh, there is no female bass player. Let me start teaching you, and then it's your choice whether you want to do it or not. And that became like a part of my life. I would go to school, come back, do my private classes, and then I would practice my music, take lessons from dad. And he was very, very like, behind me all the time. And even if he comes back after his shows at 2 a.m., he would wake me up and be like, okay, this is your lesson. So he really believed in me. And I was just
Wow, that's
doing
awesome.
it. Yeah, I was doing it until the age of 8. I seriously started liking it and enjoying it because I started understanding. And that's when I got introduced to Victor Wooten videos. And I was like, I want to sound like him. I want to do that. I want to do what he's doing. I want to feel that. And that's when I started like studying everybody's solos and started understanding why are they using those modes? Why this passing? Why this phrasing? All these kind of things. And I just educated myself because in India we didn't have like music schools back then. None actually. Now we have like maybe one or two, but then back then none. So my dad would like borrow music books from people and get it home, and I would learn to read and write at home. That's
Wow.
how I just self-taught myself how to read and write. Then around the age of, I would say 13, that's when I got offered the job in his band. And I was like, okay, you know what? All the foundation will go waste if I don't take this. So let me just do this. It's a good opportunity, and fashion can just continue on the side. And that's when I started incorporating and infusing like my fashion sense into my
Into
outfits.
yeah, into your artistry. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. And there was a marriage between both of them. It just started evolving together then instead of being separate ways.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's how it happened. And then what now? Like 15 years I've been professionally working. I'm 23 now. I started
Wow.
my first gig I did when I was 9 years old. So from that time I've been like earning, if I may say. But it's so hard in India, like it's such a male dominated world in here. Like girls can't do this, girls can't wear that, and like after 8 p.m. you can't go out and this and that. And like you have to be so rebellious and take your own stand and just do you kind of nature. You have to have that. Otherwise people will just suppress you and not want you to do anything. So yeah.
And you have to be safe at the same time, I believe.
Yeah, safe too. Yeah, safe too. Okay, we're toward the end of our questions, actually. Last question, and then we'll do with this rapid fire round of like 5 questions, and that's gonna be fun. Oh, this is cool, actually. What is the ultimate direction you follow when you're writing your own songs? Say you have an idea and you want to expand on that. How do you take that decision? Like where you want to go? Do you just let it flow, or you have an approach set for yourself before you want to take that path?
I allow the creativity to lead me a lot of times. As far as my overarching uh, goal as an artist it's always been to inspire other people.
Right.
To inspire, encourage, and empower through my music. So everything that I write, I know that it needs to be an inspiration to another.
Do you think about when you're writing your song, do you also think about how people are going to take it? Does that come to your mind when you're writing songs? Okay, that this is it sounds great to me, but then I don't know how people are going to take it. Are you taken aback by that?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the song.
And did you change it then?
Because I think that a lot of times we, as musicians, think a little bit differently about song structure than most people do. So if you do something that you think is so cool, it might be too weird for other people to think is cool. So you might have to pull it back a little bit and save that for the live show versus using it in the recording.
Yeah.
You know, there's recorded music and then there's live music. And so I think I was in the studio with will.i.am, and he was the person who kind of made me think about that. Like there are some things, there are some drum patterns you just wouldn't play on a record that you would play live, because you just want to keep a simple, steady groove. And I have to remind myself of that, because my playing has always been geared towards a live setting. So I have to pull back in the studio and just play simply. And then do whatever I want to do live. You know what I mean?
And like in studio recordings, everything's so crystal clear. Like every string noise is going to pick up.
Yeah, you're playing with the kick drum. You know, you're maybe every now and again you could do something really cool and funky. It depends on what kind of music you're doing. If you're doing pop music, then it's very straightforward.
Yeah. Okay, this is the last question, and it's taken from a lot of our videos. When was the first time you heard of me? I know I'm gonna tell you when I heard of you, but when was the first time you heard of me? We met at NAMM, right?
We met at NAMM for the first time this past year, though.
A few seconds and out.
Was it at the She Roxx Awards?
No, I think it was at the Mark Bass booth.
Oh yeah, but then you came to the She Roxx Awards.
Yes, I did. Did we meet there? Oh yeah.
Yeah, we just spoke really quickly there because I was running to the stage. But I do remember meeting you at the Mark Bass booth. Yeah. I saw a video of you. Dang, what year was that?
It must have been a long time ago.
Yeah, because you were a little girl.
Yeah.
You were, but I don't know if the video was just an older video of you as a little girl playing the bass. I can't remember what song you were playing either, but I remember somebody sent me.
Was it with a drummer? Was it with a drummer?
I want to say you were playing with a drummer. I don't remember, but it had to be a few years ago. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
I remember that must be with the drummer called Gogo Borlai.
Yeah. I think I even have the video saved on my
Day by Day. Day by Day.
Yep, I have it on my YouTube and saved it.
That was like the first video that went like viral.
I was like, who is this little girl? She is killing.
Thank you very much.
First time. Yeah.
I saw your the first video that I saw of yours was you rapping and playing.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't rap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so funky, and I was showing it to my dad. I'm like, look at this girl. She's so good and funky, and you have this little lick going on when you're playing. Yeah. So cool. I loved it. Okay, we're on to a rapid fire round with like 5 questions, and it has to be like quick. If you could switch to any other instrument, what would it be?
Drums.
What is the worst compliment you've got so far?
You play good for a girl.
What? What annoys you the most?
People saying that I play good for a girl.
Really? That also? Describe yourself in 4 words.
4 words? Bold, creative, independent, Black.
Tell us something personal that the whole world don't know about you.
Um,
It could be a habit, like anything that you do.
no, I know. I'm just thinking about something that is funny because there's a lot of things that people don't know about me.
Hmm.
Um, I used to drive an ice cream truck.
Yeah? Wow, that's cool. Well, thank you so much, Divinity. It meant a lot that you were here, and thank you so much once again for doing this for me. It was an honor.
Thank you. When are you going to be back stateside?
Ah, whenever Trump allows me.